Well, hello, everybody. I am very, very excited to have with me Lauren Reedy today. She is the chief storyteller with Forever Ready Productions. Lauren, welcome.
Hey, thanks for having me. Fun to be here today.
Yeah, so you're an Emmy-winning storyteller. I'm excited to hear a little bit about that. I actually see something over your shoulder there. So we're going to talk a little bit about the work that you do in stories and set the stage for how great stories come to be. And I know one of the things that you're very passionate about with your background is questions and the power of good questions. So many great things happen when we ask a better question. I'd like to hear from you. Tell me about a little bit about your background, and then take us right into the power of questions and what you've learned and how you're helping people with that.
Absolutely. Well, I started my career at 17. I was working at a TV station back when cameras were not robotic. So I was a production assistant. And I worked in a newsroom for a decade as a TV journalist. I was eventually on air and worked in three markets in Iowa, Nebraska, and Tennessee. And so you hear it in my voice. I have to call that out. Sometimes it's like reporting live from my desk. I can't help it. I go into that nighttime newscast cadence. But what I discovered from the years of work as a journalist is that you have to go into things and ask questions. Like I would often get an assignment and it'd be like, here's an address. Go here and find the story with no details. So as I transitioned away from being on camera and working in the news and running my business instead, I realized that I now had to lead people, which all of us have to do that. Sometimes we have to lead ourselves. Sometimes we have to lead a team. Sometimes we have to lead an entire business. And what I started to realize is that the questions I learned to ask and the techniques that I was using as a journalist applied in my own leadership in my company. And it was actually while I was hiking in a national park that I realized, wait a second, this is a superpower of yours. You know how to dig deeper really quickly. And I started to realize that asking better questions helps everyone, and it builds a culture of curiosity. It makes us all feel more comfortable not knowing all the answers. And that's really where I've leaned in, is recognizing that I can go deep quickly and empower others to do the same. And I think that builds a culture of trust within organizations, but also in ourselves as leaders when we recognize we don't have to have all the answers to lead a group efficiently and effectively.
It's so cool the out hiking and having this moment of
Yeah,
clarity, and that's really I think in itself a lesson that's easy for people to skip over, of taking that time to
right.
spend some time in the museum, go for a walk, go for a hike, and get different parts of our brains reflecting and thinking and unearthing some of these pieces of wisdom that might be latent for us.
It's so true. And I remember feeling a little stuck because I am a storyteller at heart. That's everything that I do. It's how I talk about my work. But I realized that everyone's a storyteller and they should be. But we all have sort of unique powers, unique strengths. And when I realized that it was my ability to ask questions, I thought, I want to empower more people to have that superpower and to believe it too. So that's how this transition, enlightenment, you name it, that's how it came to life, as a good old hike in Utah.
We're we're gonna learn a little bit about the work that your team is doing, but have you always been a naturally inquisitive question asker, or is that something that you found that you developed and learned, and that anybody could also learn?
I think it's a little bit of both. I've always been curious. I grew up with parents and grandparents who empowered me to believe that I could do anything if I ask enough questions, learn enough about anything, and have the passion and sort of natural talent to do it. But what I realized over the course of shadowing seasoned journalists when I was in high school and college is that they have this innate ability to be curious about everything that they do. And I think we as leaders have this feeling that we need to know the answer all the time. People come to us with questions and we have to know what we're supposed to do next. We should certainly provide vision, that's important, but often vision can be shaped by asking questions. And so I would say that it's a combination. It is innately in me to be curious. I try to be curious before I'm judgmental, just to quote Ted Lasso there for a second. But I also think that it's a learned behavior. And it starts with recognizing your own bias or your own ego in knowing that you think you know it all, right? That's a big thing to come to terms with. But once we recognize we don't have all the answers, then we can be comfortable asking questions and not feeling judged or feeling like we're, telling people we don't know. Because the truth is, a lot of us have experiences, but we don't necessarily know exactly how to do the thing that's in front of us.
Mm.
Questions empower people. Questions draw in a deeper sense of purpose. And I think they really also reveal things about ourselves we may not know are there without asking and answering them truthfully.
Well, I'm curious. So, let's say it's another speaker is listening, maybe an event planner, whoever is listening to this conversation. Any of us, whatever the work that we're doing, could get better results by asking better questions. And I'm curious, what are some of the lessons that you've learned or that you share with people? Could be people on your own team to help us move up that ladder of asking better questions. How do we get from kind of the standard? Where's the majority? Where are 70% of people operating when it comes to their approach to questions, and how do we move up into a that minority of exceptional question askers? What does that journey look like?
I think it starts with asking yourself, what is your biggest problem right now? And that can vary depending on your circumstances, but oftentimes when it comes to teams, our biggest problem is empowering the team, is motivating the team, is sharing the vision, is building a culture of trust. When you answer the question, what is my current biggest problem? Then you can start digging into the deeper parts of the solution. So whatever the answer is to that question is where you start. So for example, when we do a quarterly SWOT analysis on our team, so strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats, there's always something that comes up that surprises me. And one of our retreats, audio was an issue, microphones. And I'm like, we're a production company. Why is that an issue? And I started making all these assumptions instead of asking questions. And my assumptions led to the team wanting to spend $1,000+ to solve the problem. And I thought, no, 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 no. We're not going to spend money. Let's dive deeper. And I started asking questions and realized, oh, this isn't about the equipment. This is about preparation. This is about understanding what this means. This is about so many other things. And instead of spending $1,000+, was able to create a new culture of learning. In fact, we now have a monthly team sharing session where we talk specifically about solutions to problems we're having in the field. So I would have just gone ahead and assumed that I had the right answer and spent the money. And instead, I paused and asked questions. So you can apply that to just about any problem you're having on your team, any problem you're having in your business. And if instead of assuming you know the answer, you ask more questions, it reveals a lot.
So it sounds like even if we can just intervene in ourselves for that one moment where instead of taking the door into assumption and believing we know something, we can just replace it for that moment, ask a question, stay curious. And even in that one moment, we might completely change our understanding of what's going on, or whether it's our own business, whether it's our clients that we're doing discovery calls with, or
Right.
understanding what's going on with our audience, like what's really going on with our audience, not just what we're assuming is going on with our audience.
Well, if you think about how divided we are as a country, just in general, I think when we ask more questions of each other, we find common ground and we find ways to connect and we find ways to go deep and we find ways to be more similar than we are different. And so I think there's power in any part of our lives in doing this. And I mean, I even ask these of myself and in my own relationship with friends and with my spouse. How can we be stronger? How can we grow more trust? And it all comes down to just asking more questions. And then I think the key that we forget as leaders is to listen to the answer and let the pause or let the awkwardness be there. I have a whole framework that I walk people through that starts with asking a question and then going deeper. Tell me
Is
more about that. That's the line. Tell me more about that.
is it just me that I ask somebody their name and they tell me, and then 3 seconds later I've already forgotten their name? Is
Yes.
that
Oh,
just me?
I am, listen, I'm the queen of that. And I'm telling you to ask better questions. I need everybody in the world to wear a name tag. But aside from that, if you listen, then it opens up all kinds of things. And what I realized in my storytelling career is that's how I found stories. And I think you can find stories, but you can also learn more about your team and reveal things that were sort of hidden or not shared. You just go a little bit deeper each time. And then I will say, here's a trick for you. Here's your one actionable item after this. In your next conversation, at the end of the conversation, say, is there anything else you'd like to add? Now that's weird if you're at like at the bar or at happy hour. So you can maybe revise it to, is there anything else we need to talk about? That question often reveals the most important part of your conversation. And
Mm.
if if you give people the opportunity, they often say, no, but dot, 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 and whatever comes next is the best part, the
Yeah,
most
that one
revealing
that
part.
one thing at the end there, right?
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
That's
So it
cool.
reveals
So,
stories you didn't know were there.
what was your here's a question for you since we're talking about
All
questions.
right.
What was your inspiration for the creating the work that you and your team are doing with Forever Ready? Tell us about Forever Ready Productions and what's the why behind it? What
I
who do
love
you
when people
serve?
ask this question. I was reporting the news. I was standing really honestly in front of crime tape. I was chasing sirens, ambulances, you name it. And I would say at the end, find out more information on our website. But I wouldn't really give people any ability to be a part of the solution. It was just kind of in the moment now, breaking news, on to the next thing. And I started to get frustrated because I live in a community where I believe with you, when you get involved, you can make a difference. You can be a part of the change. So I started to pivot away from, covering the news to covering events, to covering what nonprofits were doing on the ground in my community. And Forever Ready focuses majority of our work on nonprofit storytelling. We do some branding for small businesses, but the goal of all of our work is to work with mission-driven folks to tell stories that call people to action, whether that's donating or volunteering or making a change in their own life or their own health. It's all about taking action through storytelling. So my team does that in a number of ways: documentary work, brand stories, social media content, you name it. But what the root of everything we do is to get people to act. And I think we can do that as speakers. I think we can do that as leaders by asking the questions. And what I realize is the common thread of all that work is asking questions.
Hmm,
So there you have it.
that's awesome. Okay, so but you're also a speaker. You find yourself on stage. Who are you
Yes.
speaking to, and what are you talking about?
Up until now, it's been primarily nonprofit audiences, folks who are looking to fundraise, want to elevate their fundraising storytelling efforts. But this fall, I've been on a tour talking to leaders of all ages. So every stage of their career. But what I'm finding is that the most seasoned leaders are the ones who actually need to be reminded the most
Hmm.
that they don't have to have all the answers. So the new folks, they don't have any answers. So they're asking questions because they're comfortable knowing that most people assume they don't know. But the more experienced leaders have all this life experience, all this lived experience, and oftentimes wisdom that they want to pass along. And I'm finding that the seasoned leaders are the ones who need to be reminded. It's okay. You don't have to have all the answers. You don't have to be the first person to speak, myself included, even though I'm a speaker. And so I would say the real focus now is leaders who want to get better at building a culture of trust, of curiosity, and empowering their team to be innovative and different. And that starts, like I've been saying, with asking more questions before you just assume you have the answers.
I love it. I've seen this in the world of sales where as the sales rep learns more about their product, their sales ability goes down.
You're right.
Because when I'm new and I don't know much, the only thing that I have is I have to ask questions because I don't have anything that I can even tell. And that same trap certainly happens for leaders. That the more experience that I have, the more data that I'm drawing from, the easier it is for me to fall into the trap of assumption and prescription.
Right.
And the risk of that is people become more and more dependent on me to be the decision maker, and I'm not
Absolutely.
actually building leaders. And so being able to ask good questions helps us to build leaders rather than just followers.
Well, and that's the what I'm facing right now in my company. We've been around for 10 years. So been doing video production for 10 years, have 9 staff members, and I've realized as a leader that I've got to start asking more questions to empower my team to lead so that it doesn't all fall on me. And I think that's a common mistake people make, myself included, is when you're the founder or you're the leader or you're the CEO, everything falls on you. And so to build a leadership team and to build a culture of leading themselves really is begins with asking these things and empowering them to take the answers to their own questions and go act on them too. They say every speaker says the message they need to hear or they needed to hear. I feel like that's where I'm at because in order to grow the
Mm-hmm.
company in the way that I want to, I need to empower my team to lead. And they're doing that because I sit down and ask questions instead of tell them what to do.
So while I have you here, you have years of expertise and experience in storytelling and video, and with an audience of speakers, I would really appreciate your insights on if we look at something a little bit practical and tactical, and that is if I'm a speaker and I want to tell my story, in a speaker reel format. What are some of the things? No doubt you've seen plenty of speaker reels, and you've seen
Oh, yeah.
some that you've been inspired by, and some that you've been appalled by, and everything in between. What are a few lessons or guidance ideas that you can give us when we're thinking about speaker reels as speakers?
Well, I think the first thing is iteration trumps perfection. So I just released a new reel last Friday. And it was the fourth version of the new reel. And I finally had to say, just publish it. You're not going to make any more changes that make this any different than where you started. And so a lot of folks, it's like a headshot. Your speaker reel feels like a headshot and you want it to be perfect. So getting it out there and then iterating and adding to it is my first piece of advice. Second piece of advice is use what you already have and build off of that. So if you have cell phone footage, for example, use it anyway. Do a voiceover. What people want to see when they're hiring speakers is that you, one, know how to speak, know how to tell a story, captivate an audience, but that you've done it before, right? They want to see you in action. And then my third thing is don't brand yourself so much that you're no longer coming across as authentic. Because I've seen really high quality speaker reels that are so scripted and so branded that you don't feel like you can connect with that person. Now, the reel looks great. And I also would bet that some of those reels get, five-figure keynotes. And you lose that ability to connect when you over script or over brand yourself. I think a lot of folks do that because they want to be big and they want to grow and they want to grow into it. So start with what you have, build off of that, and know that your reel should be old within 12 months because you've got all this stuff of you on stage. If you're actively speaking, you need to update it every 12 months. Might be the same message, just might be you on a different stage. Or it might be, in some cases, that you're clarifying your message, you're tuning it, you're figuring out your audience's problems are a little different. And so you're changing the way you talk about what you're doing. But don't think you don't have enough, because anybody who's watching this that considers themselves a speaker has enough to make a reel. So,
Well, and that I'd say encouragement or permission to say, use what you have. We're in a world that is, let's say, kind of paradoxically, almost has a preference for something that's a little more real, a little more gritty than
yeah.
being overproduced.
It's so true. It's so true. We're seeing that in the speakers we work with. My team works with a lot of speakers, and I've got one speaker I've done 3 reels for, and I've been working with her for 4 years. So it just we're building off what she has, and it's getting better and better each time. She's getting more confident in the way she talks about what she does, and she's getting 5-figure keynotes. And isn't that what many of us want? Is to
Yeah.
get paid to do what we love.
Yeah,
So
the
it
real is
works.
to do a job, not to be
Yeah,
perfect, and
exactly.
that's
Exactly.
important. So use what you got, keep iterating, update it every 12 months. It is interesting. You see some of the reels that float out there, or video, and it's like, I'm pretty sure that's about
10 years
20
old.
years old, maybe. You can
Yeah.
see it's kind of
And
not
here's the
sure.
thing, if that's all you have, start capturing
Start
what you
there.
have.
Yeah.
Yeah, start there and then start hiring a videographer, start hiring your friend to hold their phone. Like,
Hmm.
you don't need, I always say this, you don't need Hollywood cameras to tell Hollywood stories. You don't need Hollywood cameras to make a speaker reel that gets you hired.
Awesome. Thank you for that really helpful wisdom and insights. Any parting comments, thoughts, or things that you would like to highlight here before we bring it all together and have you tell us where people can learn more about Lauren?
Yeah, I would just say if you are a speaker, if you are someone who hires speakers, if you are a storyteller, which is most of the audience that's tuning into this, I hope that you take something from our conversation today and apply it in your next conversation. Whether that's asking at the end if there's anything else to add, whether it's approaching it knowing you don't have to have all the answers. And if you use one of these tactics we've talked about, I want to hear about it. I'd love to know how it worked. I'd love to get a success story of how it changed the way you communicate with your team. Because I think the more we share our experiences, the more we empower each other in the process.
Awesome. Lauren Reedy, tell us where people can connect with you or stay in touch.
Sure. If you want to business connect, I'm on LinkedIn, Lauren Reedy. And if you'd like to see a little more casual, I call it my sandbox. I'm on Instagram. Lauren is ready. Very easy to remember. And I'm also on Facebook, Lauren Reedy Speaking. So you can connect me with me in all those ways. You'll see a more professional look on LinkedIn. You'll see a little bit more fun behind the scenes, Lauren, on Instagram and social media. And my goal, again, it goes back to calling people to act. So hopefully the content they consume and the way we connect, we inspire each other.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Lauren.
Thanks for having me.